Hey guys, today we are going to install one of our Westcott Designs ladder racks for our Toyota 4Runner 5th Gen. Alright guys, so what is going to be included with this ladder kit? Obviously the full ladder itself, your upper mounting plate, your lower mounting plate with hardware, and the lower rubber trim piece that will sit beneath the bottom of the door here. All right guys, so first step, you are going to want to grab this upper top plate here. I like to just go ahead and remove the hardware here, set it aside for now. You're going to need it to reinstall the ladder later. All right guys, on this upper mount plate, you'll see here it has two strips of double-sided sticky tape and a couple little tension screws. You're going to remove these screws, or just hand tight generally when we ship them. So you'll go ahead, remove the whole screw and nut. And before you go ahead and stick this on the roof, you are going to want to clean it all up, get any dust or grime on there so the sticky tape sits nice and clean. All right guys, so this upper mount plate's going to sit up on the top of the hatch here. It sits above this very innermost part. One easy way to figure out how to line it up, if you look at this bracket right here, this U bracket, the left side of this rack is going to sit right in between there. So we'll go ahead and close the trunk and we'll show you a better angle of it here. When you get up here, it's pretty easy to see. Once you kind of hang over to the side, you can see the bracket in through the gap, and it's pretty easy just to hook it in and get it set. All right guys, so we're gonna go ahead and remove the backside of this sticky tape here. Now that we know where it's gonna be lined up, we got our surface clean, we're gonna go ahead and install this. So again, it's easy to see the U bracket back here if you kind of just lean over and look. So we'll go in here, hook this, make sure it's about dead center. It can be a couple millimeters off, it's no big deal. We'll pull it towards the back and then we'll sit it right in place. Give it a little bit of pressure, let it kind of stick down, and she'll be nice and solid. And again, here you can see if that bracket there, you can kind of see sits right in between this U-bolt. So if you couldn't see it from the top, you can kind of have a better angle here to see that. The side will just be over to the right of the wire harness section there. All right guys, next step, we're gonna go ahead and install these little tension screws here. Sometimes the Allen wrenches have a little bit of a hard time getting in here. If you have a spare, might be a good idea to give her a little 45-degree bend just to help get it started. It can be a little bit tricky, but once you get them going, it's pretty easy, and sometimes you can even kind of screw them in by hand. Okay. And if you look at this new angle, you can kind of see how that little tension screw is actually touching that little bit of rubberized sealant right here. This is actually a rubberized sealant just painted over, but it's a good little section to grab. You don't want to make it super tight, but definitely get a little bit of tension on there, and then we'll go ahead and install the nut around it to keep it in place. This little bracket on the right side, the set screw is pretty easy to install. You can usually get it started by hand. Once you get her kind of backed in there, you'll go ahead and tighten it up just like the other side. Again, you don't have to tighten these super tight. Just get a good little amount of tension on there, and once we add on the little set nut, it'll keep itself from backing out and keep it nice and tight. Have these little set screws on here. You're going to want to install these little nuts. They're pretty easy to get on here for the most part. This one might take a little finagling, but smaller fingers definitely help out. This side is a little bit awkward. You're not going to really be able to get a wrench or any kind of socket in there, so you're going to want to use a good set of needle nose or even a little plier. It doesn't need to be super tight, just enough to keep it from backing out. A little bit of Loctite's always a good thing as well. All right guys, now that we have the upper bracket installed and nice and tight, we're gonna go ahead and get this prepped to install the ladder. We usually like to tape off this bottom section in a couple of spots right at the lower crown, just to prevent any scratches from the ladder itself. So we'll throw a couple of pieces of tape over here. We obviously cleaned up the door first just to make sure it was nice and clean. We weren't going to cause any more scratching than these guys have already had out on the trails. Nothing wrong with some battle scars. All right, so next step, we're gonna go ahead and remove the lower step from this ladder. The lower step is just connected by these 4 side bolts. You got one on each side here. This will just detach. We'll take the ladder. We'll gently hang it on our upper bracket here. You can see how it kind of contours. This will sit right into place. Gently set it down. You can see here why we added the tape, just to reduce any chance of scratches while it's just gently up against the door here. And we'll go ahead and install the 3 screws up in the top. So we'll go ahead and drop our bolts through. Now again, this is where little hands are always going to prevail. I have big hands, it's a little bit harder for me. Yeah. Cut it. All right, so one little trick I use on these, I'll go ahead, get the washer installed first, and I will slide the bolt all the way up and kind of hold the washer in place. That way you can go ahead, grab your nut, and get that started. All right, one easy way to know if your ladder's straight is to kind of use the number 4 here as your liner. So typically when you're just a little bit to the left of the number 4 is when your rack is going to be straight. You can kind of take a look at it visually. Sometimes the bracket up top might want to kind of carry it over to the side. If you kind of just hold it right into place, you can see where it's going to be totally straight, and that'll be where we're going to end up drilling into the bottom. All right guys, next step is going to be to install the little rubber liner on the bottom. Again, we said to line up with the number 4. We'll kind of just throw it right here in between. Just helps protect the door from any contact with the metal bracket on the bottom. And if you see on this 4Runner, not all 4Runner hatch struts are created equal. Some of them seem to hold the ladder weight just fine. Some of them seem to have a hard time carrying the ladder. So we do always recommend getting a new set of gas struts. There's a few different makers online. Unfortunately, we don't make or sell any, but there's a few makers online that have a heavier duty strut for these heavy ladders. All right guys, so next step, you are going to want to remove this handle over here on the left side. It's pretty easy to remove. If you just kind of grab it from the top, it'll pop out, and you lift it up and come right out. All right guys, so now we're going to go ahead and reinstall the lower bracket and step portion. One thing I like to do to kind of help out with the installation portion is just loosen up these little bolts in here. Again, these are the 5/32 Allen nuts. But these, having a little bit of play definitely is going to help you make the installation of this step and bracket a little bit easier. Now, you don't want to go ahead and remove them, but just loosen them up a little bit. Give us some play. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and get this reinstalled. You'll just kind of slide it up from the bottom. Usually it's easiest to go ahead and get these first 2 in the back started. All right, so once you have the rear 2 bolts started, you can go ahead and get your hand in here. You can pull the ladder outward a little bit, angle the bracket up. That should give you just enough play to go ahead and get those other two side bolts started. Repeat on this side. And again, this is kind of why we loosened up these lower 6. It just helps you kind of play around with this bracket and get it started. So while you're reinstalling this lower step, you can go ahead and fully tighten up these side bolts. Get them back to nice and snug. Again, these crossbars, these steps here are aluminum, so you do not need to torque them too hard. Usually just a little bit of power will get them to stay in place for damn near ever. All right guys, now we're gonna go ahead and tighten up these 6 bolts that we loosened to get this bracket on here. All right, so next step, we're gonna go ahead and grab our lower mounting bracket. A lot of people have asked us why we chose to do the drill portion of this. We've seen a lot of the other competitors' brackets that maybe have been stuck on with sticky tape or something kind of walk back and forth as you're actually climbing up and down the ladder. So we chose to do the drill type so it doesn't move. We know a lot of people maybe have been concerned about drilling a hole or anything in the back of the hatch. If you weren't aware, there's already 2 very large holes that exist in this truck, as well as 3 weep holes. So our 2 little drill holes are not very intrusive compared to what's already there. All right guys, so you're gonna wanna get a 5/16 drill bit for this one. It definitely pays to have a friend or another technician here helping you. You're gonna wanna kind of push the bracket upward into place so it's kind of sitting up against the back of this lower lip here. And you'll just use the existing holes basically as the guide. All right, so now that you have the first hole started, you're gonna grab this bracket, slide it in, kind of get it lined up in there. You can see the little nutsert. It's gonna take a little finagling, but once you get it in, you get it started, it'll keep this kind of ladder in place. You can go ahead and grab the other side and get it drilled. All right, now that you got this single bolt loosely installed, we'll go ahead and again, pull that all the way up. And we'll go ahead and drill this guy out again. Get this nut plate up again. Get it lined up. Get your bolt started. We'll go ahead and tighten them up. All right, so we're gonna snug these down. This is gonna be a 1/2 inch or a 13 millimeter socket or wrench. Again, this is just going into a nut plate. You don't need to crank them down super hard. Just get them nice and snug and they'll stay in place. We always recommend using a little bit of red Loctite, of course, as well. All right, you can go ahead and reinstall the grab handle. It just pops into place there. And the bottom is all done. You can go ahead and remove the sticky tape. All right guys, final step on here. You're gonna wanna go ahead and tighten up the top 3 bolts and nuts. You're gonna want a 9/16 wrench and a 7/32 Allen wrench. Once you got these guys all 3 snug up top, then your ladder is all set, ready to rock and roll.